There was probably good almost 10 years where literally I didn't have a sober moment. I drank to excess 5 days a week at least. So the days I'm not drinking or drugging, it's still in my system. So technically I'm not physically sober. For me, it was, I didn't think God loved me. I loved myself so little that I couldn't allow the concept that God loves me. Building off the letter from Bill Wilson, what they talk about in Emotional Sobriety is talking about not taking things too personally. I think what it does, it creates a room to pause and assess and don't be so automatic.
Hello and welcome to 12 Steps and 12 Questions. My name is Silvio and I'm an addict. This pod is full of personal and inspirational stories of recovery from addiction. And in every episode, I'll ask each guest the same 12 questions about their life, addiction, and recovery. Quick warning, there will be some graphic descriptions and a healthy amount of swearing. For this episode, please welcome Sean. Thank you, dear listener, for tuning into this new episode of 12 Steps and 12 Questions. We have Sean B with us today, and he'll do his own introduction now, of course, but I'm excited because Sean is well-versed in emotional sobriety, and that is a topic that I'm really excited about. So, Sean, having said all this, would you like to introduce yourself quickly, please?
I would love to. Good morning, Silvio. I'm Sean. I'm an alcoholic with other addictions. Mm-hmm. Sober since September 18th, 1996. Coming to you from the Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. And I love recovery.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sean. So do I, but that's not the end of the podcast. Let's get going. Let's get straight to our question one. Did you have any adverse childhood experiences?
Yes, I did. My first remembrance of feeling alone is when we immigrated back from England. I lived in England from age 1 to age 6 in Balham. And my first conscious thought was sitting on a trunk in an empty apartment. And my first question to myself was like, what's going on here? Mm. And within my family system, we didn't talk about much, quite frankly. And just recently revisiting that, I won't say my upbringing was, there was, obviously I'm sure, definitely some emotional abuse, but it was dysfunctional.
Yeah.
And through this process, I've been able to let go of that and just work on myself.
Yeah, absolutely. So you had at age 6, what is maybe not a traumatic experience, but certainly a difficult experience. Don't want to qualify your experiences.
No, that's fine.
But apart from that, how did it go from there? So you moved, and obviously that's not where the story ended. Rather, that's where the story began. So was there a period of being incredibly unsettled that followed this?
Oh, very much so. If somebody wants to really know how I feel, the missing link in the big book tells my story. Mm-hmm. I never felt I fit in, mm-hmm. ever. But also living with that, never talking about it, just finding, my way through life. As my brother says, we were sort of free agents in our upbringing. Mom and dad were there. We had a house. We had food. At times did feel connected, but sometimes the disconnect was so deep and so lonely for me.
Yeah.
I won't speak for anybody else in my family. That quite frankly went away when I picked up drugs and alcohol.
Yeah. Before we get to that, I grew up in an Italian household, so quite different in that it's quite loud. There's always someone either crying or yelling or, on the verge of a nervous breakdown in one way or another, right? Mm-hmm. So from what it sounds very much like you had the exact opposite experience there if you didn't talk about things quite a lot, and you say you call yourself free agent. So I'm assuming it was a quiet household, maybe repressed.
Oh, definitely repressed. For the longest time, because I never understood in our house, I go to bed at night and I got a sense everything's okay. And I get up in the morning and you could just slice the tension. But I didn't know what happened. And for the longest time, if I walked into a room and other people in there, they were talking and I could hear them talking, I walk in the room and they were just naturally done with their conversation, that would trigger a level of uncomfortability in me that was just through the roof, quite frankly.
Right. Okay. So I suppose what it does is it sharpens the feelers in one way or another, and maybe in my case certainly overstimulates them. So I find, even though there was a lot of yelling and things, there were always also those sort of tensions and simmering kind of tensions, and I've picked up on that quite a lot, and it is true for me certainly that I find I'm constantly in these sort of situations gauging, maybe not am I in danger, but rather, doesn't anything need doing or saying here? Do I need to stay away? Do I need to hide? How do I need to react? Sort of an oversensitivity like that.
Definitely, the word came to mind as you were saying that, it was hypervigilance.
Yeah.
And to this day, I'm more, obviously because of recovery, I'm more aware of it and can deal with it, and it doesn't happen as much. But no, I was hypervigilant all the time because in my mind, my family growing up wasn't a safe place. I've incorporated, I've recently went into the ACA program, which has really helped me a lot.
Mm-hmm. What is ACA?
Adult children of alcoholics and or dysfunctional families. Because about 3 years ago, I sort of flatlined in AA a little bit. But what triggered it was being on a meeting over Zoom and getting this feeling of not being connected. Now, it's based on nothing. Nobody has said, so you don't belong here or anything. And I'm thinking to myself, well, maybe I just need to work on acceptance. Like, I'm not accepting this.
Mm-hmm.
And in what I do, I was working with somebody who was actually starting an ACA group in Maryland, and they wanted me to go through the steps with them. I said, okay, and I bought the book, and I had the book on the shelf. And this day, I just took it down, and I read those 14 traits, and I'm like, wow, I can still sense, feel, experience 10 of them.
Yeah.
So, because of AA, my next step was into the ACA or the ACOA program, because I don't have to settle anymore. Like before recovery, I just settled it. Like, this is my lot. I can't do anything about it, kind of thing. And now I don't have to.
Yeah.
And that's one of the many gifts of coming into recovery, is we don't have to settle.
No, we don't. It's a beautiful message there, Circling slightly back to what we were saying, since your childhood, how did this hypervigilance and so on and so forth, before we move into our question 2, did this hypervigilance and that affect you greatly when you were at school and in other areas of your life?
Oh, very much so. Recently, I went to college the first time in like 1977.
Mm-hmm.
And a bunch of us still play golf. And so we were talking, and I didn't ask questions. Somebody asked a question, and it was about, like, what did you think of Sean or each other while we were in college? And somebody answered, well, Sean was okay. He was a cool guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought to myself, you had no idea what it was like inside. Living with that hypervigilance, those secrets, and it brought a smile to my face.
Yeah.
So it wasn't bad. So.
Do you know what is interesting? And we'll come to our question 2, and I'm aware I'm slightly going off script, but it's just too interesting, really. But what I'm aware of is what you just said is the fact that we don't have to settle. And I love that. as a message, first and foremost. And I find it interesting. I'm a 51-year-old man, and I am still affected by and informed by those things that happened in the first 10 years of my life. And maybe I would have, at some point or another, would have been critical of that and kind of gone, oh God, do you really have to bang on about this? Bloody hell, a lot of time has passed and all of that. But these things, whether we want to or we don't, they stay with us, and we don't have to settle. Interesting. Our question 2 is, what did the moment you first got hooked, what did the fun times look like? So I caveat that not everybody had fun times, of course, but for alcoholics and addicts, usually there is a party time or a time where either a substance or a behavior does something for us that we can't do for ourselves without the consequences coming in right away. So what did that look like for you, Sean?
Well, just like they say, don't forget your first drink. I to this day, with my eyes open, could picture Colgate Field in West Orange, New Jersey, age 14.
Mm-hmm.
There's three other people there. I think 2 of those 3 eventually went to AA, and I believe it was either a Coors beer or a Stroh's beer. Back then, we're talking the 70s. Back then, the big thing with Coors is, was refrigerated trucks from Colorado. I loved it. I love what it did to me. And I knew, in hindsight, obviously, I'm processing this through recovery. I had found me. I knew I was going to do that again. Because my first drug of choice was marijuana, which I tried in the 7th grade. And, it gave me the effect, but I didn't like that effect as much as I liked the effect of alcohol and other drugs.
Yeah.
But man, I just, even right now, I can just feel it in my body. When I had that beer, I knew I had found the solution.
Mm-hmm.
To that inner.
Did you drink alcoholically right away, or did you have a grace period?
Mm-hmm. Right away. Now, at that point, age 14, I'm not going into bars. But every chance I got, I drank. And I drank to blackout. When I wasn't drinking, I'm thinking how to get it. I'm thinking, okay, I know this older guy down the street. I could probably hook him up with, can you go get me? Back then it was quarts of beer. And by 16, 17, my drink, I stole money for my alcohol and my drugs, which cost me a job. And this job paid half of my tuition for high school, and so it's real soon there was consequences. Yeah.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. There's no, in order to be, if we're talking about qualifying for being an alcoholic or not, and qualifying even sounds almost like, we're qualifying for a tournament, sports or something like that. Like, it's so desirable, but it is the term that is often used. So let's go with it. And either, there's many, many possibilities. I didn't drink to blackout right away, for instance. Other people do. I looked at those people and I thought, oh God, what's wrong with them when I was 16 maybe or so, and little did I know it was about to happen to me. So, this isn't to say that for the listener, particularly if you're early in, isn't to say that that's the experience you're supposed to have. I think we have a variety of experiences. I just wanted to highlight those. Mm-hmm.
Well, it all made sense when I came to AA and my first meeting, I bought the big book. And the first thing that hit me was that part of the big book where it says, we're restless, irritable, discontent.
Mm.
Again, I could feel the ease that a few drinks or drugs, depending, or food, porn, whatever you want to throw in there, that others can consume or use without impunity.
Yeah.
And I had to look that word up.
Mm.
And when I looked it up, it was my very first aha moment.
Mm.
And then we talk about the jaywalker. We talk about the person that put the drink down for decades and picked it up and eventually, passed away from it. And then, the Jekyll and Hyde, the antisocial behavior. I had people telling me that I had a problem with alcohol. But at that point in my life, my answer was, well, what's your point? This is what I do.
Yeah. Yeah. And so there were some consequences, but I'm assuming you were also experiencing a good time, at least at some point, and you were it was doing things for you that you couldn't do for yourself.
Oh yeah. I mean, I did have a good time around alcohol, dare I say that, in college and the camaraderie that comes with that in normal circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
But inevitably I crossed that line. Now, again, this isn't hindsight after coming into AA and understanding what alcoholism is. But I always crossed that line. It was always on my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Was there an immediate progression in terms of the amount you drank, how often you drank, and so on, or or was it stable for a while?
Oh, no. I mean, obviously, from age 14 to when I went to college, it was metered, for lack of a better term, just because of age and money and how to get it. It took off when I went to college. I went to a small school in North Carolina, and it's the only school I applied to here. I'm sure it's the same over there. And my only intent of applying there was I just want to go there so I can drink and party the way I want to. And it just took off. I was thinking the other day, there was a probably good almost 10 years where literally I didn't have a sober moment. Now people say, you didn't drink every day. I drank to excess 5 days a week at least. So the days I'm not drinking or drugging, it's still in my system. So technically I'm not physically sober.
Yeah, no, true. Absolutely.
And we had good times, but inevitably, as we all do, I crossed that line, and that self beating up part of us comes in, and it was just a vicious circle.
Yeah,
in its essence.
What you said reminds me of something that I sort of forgotten. I must have been in my maybe 17, 18, my late teens in any case. I went through a phase where, I say a phase, always good 5 years. When you're 17, that's a long time. I went through I had this time where I smoked marijuana or hash every single day. Not one day went past where I didn't, right? And I remember this one time where I had some awareness, I don't know, struck me out of nowhere because I spent most of my time being numb and dumb, from the marijuana, from being just not there really, because that's what I wanted, right? I wanted to zone out. It was the whole point of it, and yet some awareness from somewhere struck me. And it kind of went like that. I sat in my car, and I sat there and thought to myself, have I actually smoked today or have I not smoked today? And I couldn't tell the difference any longer as to whether I was high or not. And as to whether I had already smoked or not, some awareness, or maybe even want to be meta about it, as awareness of my unawareness struck, Did you have any awareness around this time? I mean, speaking of 10 years, that's a long time. Did you have any awareness of your state of being, of your state of mind?
The only awareness I would have would be the morning after. I would wake up and it'd be okay. They'd be like, oh, I did it again. And speaking about, Potter, I was myself doing about an ounce a week. And I actually quit it, I think around 19 or 20, because the paranoia really set in for me.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But my awarenesses were definitely more the morning after kind of thing. And the other awareness I had is I remember at one point I had a bottle underneath the front seat of my car. And I remember one morning taking a swing and looking at it and just like, this isn't normal. This is no longer a phase kind of thing. if that makes sense. Because I think part of alcohol and drugs, there is somewhat of a rite of passage associated with it. I mean, we can't deny that. But I definitely went right past that.
Yeah. I mean, at some point, it is well past the, I'm doing this because everybody else is doing it, or I'm doing this because everybody else is in their first year at college, or anything like that. At some point, you shoot past that. Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Let's get to our question 3. What were your worst consequences, and finally your rock bottom, or that moment that took you into the rooms? Now, I'm aware, of course, we might be covering a very, very long period of time here, but
Right.
let's go into it nonetheless and think about how it progressed and maybe some quote-unquote highlights, memorable moments.
Well, my first time into AA was age 22. I was at a bar with my girlfriend, and she was driving me home, and again, definitely missed the mark again. And I jumped from a moving car to get to a bar. She wouldn't stop, so I just jumped out. And to this day, I don't know how I knew, but where I was working, I knew Bob was in AA. And I remember I was working at a hospital at the time, and I went in on my day off, and I said, Bob, I think I'm an alcoholic. And I remember going to a few meetings. I didn't drink for 6 months, and then I picked up again.
Yeah.
Which my ultimate rock bottom was in June of 1996. I was married 12 years, 3 children, and we decided to separate. And she went back to, herself and Joan went back to her hometown, and that just drove me to my knees.
So trauma came into your life and accelerated things.
Correct. I mean, the gift of desperation, as they say. July of that year, I went to a party, and the usual outcome. And I met somebody at the party and was going to get to a point of intimacy, for lack of a better term. And I stopped, and she said to me, Sean, what are you running from? Yeah. And I'm like, looking at her like I just met her.
Mm.
And I get in my car, and I remember driving down along the Delaware River. And I just cried out, God, is this my life? The next thing I did is I went to see my buddy Timmy, who was in AA at that point about 8 years, and really has a really good life. And I go down and talk to him, says, Timmy, am I an alcoholic? And he says, Sean, I can't tell you that. I can say you show some of the traits. What a great 12-step, line. And the next thing is I go back to this therapist I had been seeing, and I get this question out, am I an alcoholic? And I just ended the sentence. He said, yes.
Right.
And that's how I came into AA. So that rock bottom was, I have not felt that low ever since.
Did you separate over alcohol with your ex-wife?
Probably a little bit, but there's more to it than that.
Sure, of course. Yeah.
Because, as they say, the alcohol is but a symptom of my disease. There's other stuff involved. So, but I'm sure it didn't help.
No.
You know what I mean? There was times, she would my wife would pick me up at the bar, and I'd wake up in the morning I remember one time waking up in the morning in the car. We had a Renault Fuego, and it had the retractable roof.
I remember those.
Right? And I wake up and the sun's out. And I'm like, where the hell am I? So I'm sure it certainly didn't help, and the attitudes that go along with it.
Yeah, of course, yeah. I mean, few things are more disturbing than waking up from a blackout. And, to this day, few things are more disturbing, even if nothing really greatly happened, and I might wake up in the lounge or, in my bedroom, albeit fully clothed and God knows what, but still, if you don't remember what happened, I found it so disconcerting.
I agree.
Did you really roll out of a moving car? That's quite.
One other story is my then wife and I were in New York City, had a nice dinner. I do remember 2 bottles of wine and me judging her, why couldn't she finish hers in my mind, heading home. And again, I just want to stop off at the local bar. Nope. Opened out the door, went over, and out I went. Yeah, I was definitely, I was uncontrollable sometimes.
Thought of yourself as an alcoholic Superman of sorts. Something like that. Yeah. We laugh, and sometimes, we laugh of it from the point of recovery, but of course, if you're in the middle of it, and if you're the person driving the car, then it's anything but funny,
No, and my alcoholism has affected my children. Definitely, the generation of dysfunctionality that I brought in with it. But the good part is that I don't beat myself up over that anymore. I have changed, and I'm there for my kids.
Question 4 is taking us back to the beginning of AA, of your time in AA, and just before you came in, and at your worst. Question 4: did you ever want to die? Did you consider suicide?
Oh, definitely. I remember one time being at a bar in type place, and again, I can picture it with my eyes open. I'm sitting in a white Adirondack chair. The building's green, long lawn, and there's a road down there, and I literally had to grab the armrest of the chair because the overwhelming want to run in front of traffic was just pretty overwhelming at the moment. So, and then there's other things, waking up in the next morning, like you said, not knowing where you're at or whatever. There was times there like, I just want this to end.
I mean, it's difficult to talk about these things, and I always say this, or very often say this when we're recording, to whoever is listening, that if you're feeling that way right now, reach out. There is help, plenty of help available. Don't suffer in silence.
Correct.
I remember, for me too, there were times, particularly in the come downs, and the next day, I'd been up maybe for 48 hours, maybe more. My clothes are sticking to me. I'm disgusted with myself. Sometimes I don't know where I've been, what I've done, and cursing the fact that, we live in the first floor, and, if only it was higher, maybe I'd throw myself out of the window. I'm not sure whether I would have done, but this is where it takes us. And it's important to remember that, as difficult as it is to talk about it. Now, question 5 is, what other methods did you try to get sober before finding the rooms? I'll start one myself. I was great for white knuckling and moderation, right? Or at least attempts at moderation. I obsessed over how many lines I could possibly take if we went out versus if we were at a quiet dinner party versus if I sat alone at home and on a Tuesday afternoon, right? And that was one of the many ways for me to try and either get sober or at least control my using and my drinking. Let's have some of yours.
Much like yours, I'm going to moderate. I'm going to say, okay, I'm not going to drink today, or I'm only going to do this. Self-help books.
Yeah.
I have no idea how many self-help books I really read. But I don't think that was for nothing, because I think that information did seep in that maybe I use now. But for me, it was just moderation or white knuckling. And, what recovery has given me is I don't have to white knuckle anything anymore. Because even as we speak about it, I can remember those white knuckling periods, and not pleasant to say the least. At least inside.
Yeah. I would often get, even in times when I wasn't really struggling all that badly, but I would often get people saying things to me like, oh, you seem so tense, or someone once said to me, you have the energy of a coiled spring. That's right. You have the energy of a coiled spring. Things like that, and I was also I must have read all of them in the 90s and sort of early noughties, all the self-help books of the time. And I agree with you. There's some good stuff in there, particularly if they have any sort of spiritual backdrop to them. But as long as you're drinking and using, of course, nothing good can come of it. Yeah.
No, I mean, the process, the brain process obviously is not up to par, as it were.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Thank you, Sean. Thank you for sharing that. So our question 6 is, once you came into the rooms, did you struggle with the word God? If you're enjoying this podcast and would like other addicts and alcoholics to hear it, then please make the pesky AIs and algorithms work their 12th step. Hit like and subscribe.
No.
But
what I struggle with, me being worthy of his or its love, because it's very interesting. So I come into AA and I'm, working the steps, doing what I'm supposed to do, and then we get to step 2, and I remember calling my cousin Danny, who's sober now, I think 45 years, and I'm just going on about this God thing, and he says, Sean, you either believe or you don't believe, and it, there is a period of defogging, as they say. And then I remember when I was 17, I had the paper signed to become a Christian brother. Based on, by that age, the drugs and alcohol wasn't doing for me what I wanted to do. So maybe, I should become a priest. Like I remember going to Hell's Kitchen. There was a couple of us. I went to a Catholic high school. And we went to psychology, the psychiatrist, and the ink blot test. So I passed it. And I remember the envelope again. I can see the envelope right now with the papers in it. And so I come into AA and I'm like, yeah, for me it was, I didn't think God loved me. I loved myself so little that I couldn't allow the concept that God loves me, if that makes sense. And yeah, it was tough, but people in AA and in recovery were very gentle about it. Saying, okay, that's fine. Just keep coming back.
Yeah.
And now I have a wonderful relationship with a higher power.
How long did it take you to grow into it? Into more faith?
I'm still growing into it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I can't give you a time frame more. I can give you more what I did. I remember going to, somebody said, a couple of guys in the area were going to a Matt Talbot retreat. So I did that. And I remember Jim, I was thinking about him the other day. We were sitting in a meeting once and he leans over and goes, Pop. I'm like, what's that? I says, that's my head coming out of a little bit more. But what he's saying is that he was a very spiritual person. And those are the people I hung around with. I think AA, or quite frankly, any 12-step group, for spirituality, there's people with PhDs in there. And I just would talk to them and be honest with them, gain some information, and, it's an ongoing process, but it's not from, I'm afraid I don't believe perspective. I just want more. So.
Our question 7 is, how do you experience your higher power? It's also a good place to share some God moments, if you like.
Right now?
Generally.
Yeah, no. What I mean is right now is a God moment.
Oh, right.
Just, one of my first God moments I remember was early recovery, driving home from work, and I'm sitting in traffic and I look out my window and there's a little girl on the sidewalk with her bike and she just smiles at me. Just being open to accept that, and to smile back and to feel that warmth. I don't know if this is really answers the question, but I experience them all the time when I'm open to them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, I think one of the major ones is finding adult children of alcoholics and the emotional sobriety groups and getting involved with that.
Yeah.
You know, and because I think that takes a degree, or whoever does that, of openness to a power greater than ourselves.
Mm. How does emotional sobriety, do you think, open yourself up more to a power greater than yourself?
In its simple form, the letter by Bill Wilson about emotional sobriety, Next Frontier, is looking at those dependencies in my life
Mm-hmm.
and discerning for myself, okay, is it a dependency? And just being acquainted with that, if that makes sense, does open me to let my higher power in to help me with those dependencies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, I think when, you know, if we talk about higher power, sometimes for me, it's hard to put into words.
Yeah, it is very hard to put into words. Yes.
You know, one of the great things I've been blessed to do is I go to Ireland every year. I love Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just drive around, and I love finding these old churches and just sitting in there quietly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it doesn't have to be big cathedrals, it could be little chapels or whatever, and just experiencing that peace. You know, because I didn't have that peace in early recovery. I was just all over the place.
Mm.
You know, so it's sort of engaged there now. It's like I can look back and then really experience the connection in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Question 8 is, which parts of the steps were the most difficult for you?
I think step 2 and step 3, the God parts, the initial God steps, because I had to work through, well, he or she, whatever it is, I'm unworthy of it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, of that connection and building that connection. You know, I still have character defects.
We'll come to those.
Okay. You know, excuse me. But that was the hardest part of it, because for me, from step 2 all the way through, I'm bringing the God of my understanding with me. And I've been blessed to start with a very childlike faith. And as I said, I just pause it because it's almost like I'm returning to that childlike faith through this process.
Yeah.
You know, because if you look at a child, or you know, and ask them, you know, they don't even know who God is. You believe in God? Yes, they just automatically.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so if any of the steps would definitely have been step 2 and step 3.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you there all the way. Step 3. Apart from the fact, of course, that I took a long time to do my own step 1, you know, but step 3, I think, is the one that I struggle with the most. And still, because it's a daily step,
Mm-hmm.
rather than, or even an hourly step or moment per moment step, is something that I've struggled with and struggle with occasionally, where, you know, anytime I think something should be different than it is, you know, I tend to want to go in and fix it and do it all myself and so on, and just get taken over by self, rather than turning, you know, to the power that is there.
But the good thing for us now is we know where to turn when we're ready.
Yeah.
You know, the step 10 and 11 can prepare me for my day. You know, looking ahead, okay, where, you know, possibly where could I be dishonest and angry and any other character defect, and prepare for it.
Speaking of character defects, question 9 is, which character defects give you most trouble? Now, what I thought is interesting is we met at the Emotional Sobriety Conference, didn't we? And
Right.
Dr. Alan Berger, whom I'm a great admirer of, he spoke of using the term character default, because he says it's less shamey. Is there something in that for you as well, before we actually get to the actual defects or defaults?
Oh, definitely. a couple of years ago, I listened to a YouTube video by John C. on the science of acceptance. And because I find with myself and working with others that if we just keep working on this character defect, we almost end up just blaming ourselves, beating ourselves up, quite frankly. I know that's what I've done. But he proposed looking at behaviors, but also not forgetting that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be and I'm perfect in who I am today.
Yeah.
And to your point with Alan Berger has definitely opened up my mind that I have behaviors. I have good behaviors, bad behaviors. A big one, I mean, my first emotional response at times is anger. Because that's what I was brought up with. That's my go-to.
Yeah.
And I think with that character defect, it does give me a sense of power. And I think the next character defect for me would be fear.
Right.
That automatic fear of the unknown feeling. But again, we have a program of recovery that helps with this.
Yeah. Do you find that emotional sobriety and the teachings and learnings of emotional sobriety help you particularly with addressing these things?
Oh, definitely. Because what they talk about in emotional sobriety is, building off the letter from Bill Wilson, which Alan Berger and others have done, is talking about not taking things too personally.
Yeah.
That's one thing, in regards to even my anger defect is I can put back and says, okay, are you taking something personal here? I think what it does, it creates a room to pause and assess. And don't be, at least for me, don't be so automatic with my responses.
Yeah. So an increased awareness there. Yeah. One of the things that I'm slightly going off script here for a second, but one of the things that I took away, just quite rightly, as you were saying, is not taking things too personally. Now, that is the exact opposite of my default mechanism, right? So, in a way, for me, anything that could happen is somehow then related to me and my life, even though it has absolutely nothing to do with it. We have a rainy summer, somehow seems to be in one way or another personal when it really isn't, and all those sort of things. And I find and I've only dipped my toes into emotional sobriety, that there's been so many answers there, and so many new tools that I found were so helpful and so interesting.
It's almost like taking, as they say in the rooms, peeling the onion to another level. Now, it's all based in, from the original 12 steps, but it's taking it to another level. It's realizing, it's almost unpacking the character defect a little bit more.
Yeah.
I could pray about anger, but there's more to it than that. Is it taking things personal? It's also remembering that I'm self will run riot. So,
I think a lot of it is somewhere around step 6 and 7 where this gets addressed. But it's been said many times, and I think I could introduce myself like this at the moment by saying that I'm a recovered addict, but I'm a recovering human being, and that's for sure. And I find that it's the part of me that is recovering. So we're talking about character defects. We're talking about taking things seriously, personally, and all those sort of things. They still need an enormous amount of work, even though I don't turn to, cocaine or the bottle anymore. And I found that emotional sobriety and what I've learned of it so far, and stage 2 recovery, as it's called, which is such a brilliant way of putting it, addresses those things in particular and just allows me to go a little bit deeper. So, yeah, great stuff. Thank you. Thank you, Sean. Question 10. What is the best thing recovery has given you?
so many things, but yet it's so hard to list. It's given me a new career,
Right.
freedom, peace, human connections, comfortability inside. And I try to recircle back to that inner peace.
Yeah.
Which it's not always there. I mean, we're human, but it's attainable. I was thinking today that I believe for myself that even on the day that I die, I can wake up and have a purpose and work towards that purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe go back to where in the beginning of this is I'm not stuck. I don't have to settle.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't have to settle. It's a brilliant mantra. It really is. Question 11. What would you say to a newcomer or someone wondering if they're an addict? I appreciate that it's a bit of a 2-for-1 question, but let's go for it. So what would you say to those people?
I'm big on educating myself. Let's find out if you are or you aren't. Obviously, going to meetings. Yeah, go to meetings, go to speaker meetings, and obviously, works a lot better when we're not drinking or drugging to come to that conclusion. But stay and find out. That's what I did. At my first meeting, I bought the big book and I went home and I read it. And I'm like, holy mackerel, I'm an alcoholic. But more importantly is I experienced those inner feelings that I thought I only experienced within those stories.
Yeah.
Which was important to me. And I'll just share with them what I did is just go to a lot of speaker meetings and identify. If you can get a sponsor, if you understand the concept of sponsor, get a sponsor, start building that support group, which can be hard and scary. I was blessed when I came in, my first sponsor, temporary sponsor, found me my first sponsor, Dennis, who has since passed away, but is exactly what I needed.
Yeah.
He was warm, caring, call me when you can, met him at meetings, and was open. So find somebody that is open in the moment, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What about those who are wondering if they're an addict?
Well, that part in the big book says, if you think you are, you probably are, right? But again, because over my sobriety time, I have evolved. Is just giving that person the space to for them, with your help, to come to some conclusion. Because I think one of the worst things is staying in AA and never coming to that conclusion. Because the best part of the big book for me is conceding to my innermost self that I am an alcoholic. That was one of the greatest gifts to me, but that's a process. Because if I didn't get to that point, step 2 through 9, emotional sobriety, any of that, it's not possible for me. Because I have this nagging thing in the back of my head, well, maybe I'm not that bad.
Yeah.
So it's almost let's get rid of that, I'm not that bad. Let's get to the point, are you or aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, certainly from my own experience, if you have any reservations still and you're engaging with this process, those reservations that you might have, and they come in the form of, I'm not really like them, they're a lot worse than me, or maybe the other way around, I'm a lost cause, I might not have to engage with it, or any of those sort of things. The moment you have sort of those reservations, they get sniffed out pretty quickly. And you will find that you will struggle pretty quickly, and you probably kind of go out again on the back of those.
Oh, sure. Because you have a secret.
Yeah.
Let the secret out. Go to a meeting and say, I don't think I'm an alcoholic. Let's see what kind of feedback you get.
Yeah, absolutely.
At least be honest with yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's certainly for those people who are listening and who may not have been in the rooms yet and wondering maybe if they should go or not, it's a great place to find out you're not an alcoholic if you're not one. very friendly people, tea and coffee, right?
And donuts and biscuits.
Yes, exactly. It's absolutely fine, and nobody's going to judge you either. If you're not, there's no, believe it or not, there's no shame in not being an alcoholic, but it's good to find out and know, that's for sure. And our 12th question, which is, what do you want your higher power to say to you, quote unquote, at the pearly gates?
I want him to hug me or her, don't know what it is, and then basically say, get in there, you knucklehead. You're always good to begin with. That's it. It's because I do believe whatever's upstairs has already forgiven us, has always forgiven me, and, by expanding my spiritual edition, maybe he'd be like Robin Williams. That'd be hysterical. I love Robin Williams, but I just want to go in and enjoy, because I am interested in the afterlife, what's there.
Yeah.
But I think just a hug and, all right, you're in, get in there.
I find it very difficult to unsee the idea of Robin Williams at the pearly gates. He'd steal the show. He'd be brilliant.
He would.
Yeah. No, he definitely would. He was also one of us, of course.
Yes.
If not one of the most prominent members of our beautiful fellowship. Sean, it's been an absolutely wonderful conversation with you today. Thank you so much for bringing your wisdom and the courage to share all those bits of ourselves that we don't really want everybody to see. So thank you so much for this conversation today on 12 Steps and 12 Questions.
Thank you, Silvio. It was great meeting you, and I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you. We've come to the end of this episode. Thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed it and would like other addicts and alcoholics to hear it, then please make the pesky AIs and algorithms work their 12th step. Hit like and subscribe. While this pod is based on the 12-Step Recovery Program, it's not officially affiliated with any 12-Step fellowship. 12 Steps and 12 Questions is not substance or behavior specific, it's fully self-supporting and not-for-profit. And this next bit, it's not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization or institution. It does not wish to engage in any controversy, and it neither endorses nor opposes any causes.